So something just happened which a lot of us thought was unthinkable. The Supreme Court has just granted certiorari in a Second Amendment case. Let's talk about this. But real quick before we jump into this video, if you think that the federal government needs to stop infringing on our Second Amendment rights, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. I also want to give a shout out to one of the main sponsors of the channel, USCCA. Through your membership, you get training, education, and self-defense liability protection. So if you're in the market for something like that, if you carry a firearm, I highly recommend you look into liability protection. USCCA is the company I recommend, and I'll put a link to them down in the details section. So like I said in the intro, the Supreme Court has just granted certiorari in a Second Amendment case. What does this mean, granting certiorari? It means the Supreme Court will hear a Second Amendment case. And this case is New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Corlett. This is a case we talked about prior on this channel when this case was distributed for conference in the Supreme Court. They kicked it down the road a few times, reconsidered it, but today we finally got news that they will hear this case. So I'll put a link to everything I'm going to talk about in this video down in the detail section if you want to read it for yourself. But here I just want to read the granting of the certiorari, the question that was presented to the court, and the question in which they are actually going to hear this case. So the first thing we're going to look at is the question presented in this case, which was put forward by the party to the Supreme Court when they were seeking certiorari. And so the question presented by the parties to the Supreme Court was, New York prohibits the ordinary law-abiding citizens from carrying a handgun outside the home without a license, and it denies licenses to every citizen who fails to convince the state that he or she has proper cause to carry a firearm. So that's the main issue in this case, is New York State's issuing of carry licenses, concealed carry licenses, and them requiring proper cause. And now, we talked about this in a prior video. Proper cause is even a higher standard than some of the other standards that are out there for carry licenses. New York State doesn't even allow individuals to put self-defense as a basis for the issuance of a license. Instead, and I'll read here what the requirement is, instead the proper cause requires an applicant to demonstrate a special need for self-protection distinguishable from that of the general community or of persons engaged in the same profession. So by its very definition, for you to be issued a carry license in the state of New York, you need something that is so unique from the ordinary individual or from someone who's in the same position as you. Again, it's a higher standard than what a lot of other states have in the issuance of carry licenses. The question presented to the Supreme Court goes on and states, in District of Columbia v. Heller, this court held that the Second Amendment protects the individual right to possess and carry weapons in case of confrontation. And in McDonald v. City of Chicago, the court held that this right is fully applicable to the states. So if you're not aware, Heller is kind of that first major Second Amendment case that the Supreme Court addressed, and then McDonald actually applied those to the states as well. So those are the two main Second Amendment cases, but since then, we haven't had any major Second Amendment cases taken up by the Supreme Court. In fact, they've even punted and kicked away very major Second Amendment cases. They just haven't addressed them to this point, which has left the Second Amendment law very much in limbo. For more than a decade since then, numerous courts of appeals have squarely divided on this critical question, whether the Second Amendment allows the government to deprive ordinary law-abiding citizens of the right to possess and carry a handgun outside the home. This circuit split is open and acknowledged and is squarely presented by this petition, in which the Second Circuit affirmed the constitutionality of a New York regime that prohibits law-abiding individuals from carrying a handgun unless they first demonstrate some form of proper cause that distinguishes them from the body of the people protected by the Second Amendment. The time has come for this court to resolve the critical constitutional impasse and reaffirm the citizens' fundamental right to carry a handgun for self-defense. So there's a brief summary of what this case involves. It involves New York State's restrictions on individuals being able to carry concealed firearms out in public, handguns out in public. In New York State, you have to have a license, and to get a license, you must show some sort of proper cause. Again, it's a standard that is a lot higher than just saying, I want to carry a handgun for self-defense. You have to distinguish yourself in some way from ordinary individuals who are in similar positions as you. So what's important here and what I want to point out to you guys is the difference between the question presented by the parties and the actual question presented that the court took up cert on. So the question presented by the parties is whether the Second Amendment allows the government to prohibit ordinary law-abiding citizens from carrying handguns outside the home for self-defense. So a very broad question presented. Well, here you had the Supreme Court granting certiorari on a limited question presented. They said they granted limited to the following question: whether the state's denial of petitioners' applications for concealed carry licenses for self-defense violated the Second Amendment. So it's a little bit different from the question presented by the parties. The question here is whether or not self-defense is sufficient for you to be issued a carry license. Now, that doesn't mean that that's all they're going to address here, but that is the main question presented. I'm sure there's going to be some other language here talking about the Second Amendment at large, but again, the questions that are presented by the party and the question taken up by the Supreme Court is a little bit different. So this is definitely a big deal because we have finally another Second Amendment case going to be finally heard by the Supreme Court. This is especially important for us here in the Ninth Circuit, especially coming off of the Young v. Hawaii decision. The Ninth Circuit has found recently in Young v. Hawaii that you do not have a right to carry a firearm open in public. They also said in Peruta, you do not have a right under the Second Amendment to carry a firearm concealed out in public. So under the Ninth Circuit's precedent, you don't have a right under the Second Amendment at all to carry a handgun for self-defense out in public, whether open or concealed. There are other circuits that have found differently on the issue of carrying a handgun outside in public. So there's been this circuit split, which you hear them talk about in the question presented, and the reason why they're seeking cert from the Supreme Court is because there is a circuit split. And we need the Supreme Court to finally address this issue, which is important because it could have huge ramifications for other jurisdictions and other cases as well. So this is definitely something we're gonna be keeping our eye on. When we have the date for when oral arguments are, I'll definitely let you guys know so you can listen to those, watch those as well. I will be covering those as well. And if there's any more updates on this, we will let you guys know. But this is a big deal. We are finally going to have the Supreme Court address another Second Amendment case. We will see whether or not the new Supreme Court justices who are appointed will actually rule in favor of the Second Amendment. We've had some individuals like Kavanaugh was very critical in the Heller issue. We'll see how Amy Coney Barrett comes out on the Second Amendment issue now that it's before the Supreme Court, as well as Gorsuch. We're pretty sure how Justice Thomas is going to rule, as well as Alito. We know we can't trust Roberts, that's for sure, so we're not really counting on him. But even still, there should be at least 5 conservative constitutional justices who should rule in favor of the Second Amendment, but we will see how this plays out. Also want to mention that in just a couple weeks, we will be having the Armed in May event. May 8th and May 9th, you can come out to Route 66 Shooting Sports Park in San Bernardino, meet myself as well as Reno May, shoot some guns, meet some cool vendors. We're gonna have food, all of that. It's gonna be a 2-day event. I'll put a link to it down in the details section if you're interested in coming out. Again, I can't thank you guys enough for all the support you've shown me here on this channel, and I'm really excited to meet a lot of you guys out there at the event. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and comment down below and I'll try to answer to the best of my ability. Also, if you guys like this video and you like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, subscribe, and make sure you hit that notification bell because it helps the channel analytics, helps us spread the word about the Second Amendment, also spread the word like this that is going on in the US, which affect our Second Amendment rights. So as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And never forget, this nation was built by armed scholars. This nation will be maintained by armed scholars.